Welcome to this episode of Teach Me On Through Jeremiah's Eyes. This is your host, Jeremiah Pouncey, and today I am joined by a very special guest. So you've done research on how fishes eat fruits, poop seeds, and plant trees. That he says that's your slogan, and as well as how fish have evolved truly unique adaptations over time as well. So could you teach me about these very weird fishes and also how fish are involved in seed dispersal?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, for having me here.
Thanks for joining.
Like on Zoom, like remote. I'm Matt Kolmann. I am a evolutionary biologist who studies fishes. I'm interested in the evolution of form and function. So how things are shaped and how those shapes correspond to how like a structure like a bone or a tooth is used. And so currently I'm a newly minted beginning professor at, and I have to say this correctly, University of Louisville. And I study fish, and I'm glad to be here.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll start off again with, I'm interested in fish because there's a lot of fish, right? There's like 35,000 species. They do a lot of weird things, or at least that are weird to us, and I think people have a hard time kind of visualizing what fishes do because we have this very like mammal centric sort of bias, right? And so we talked a little bit about, I always like to go back to this idea of like the example that all people know is like the savannah. We've all seen it with like Attenborough and stuff like that, where you've got lions are the predators, hyenas are the scavengers, antelopes are the prey. I want people to think about fish in those same roles. The predator, the prey, the scavengers, the parasites, these are all generalizable things that exist in all these different places on Earth, be they on land, in the sea, and lakes. And I'm predominantly interested in understanding how fishes have evolved to kind of fit those jobs. How do you evolve to become a predator that only feeds on the scales and slime of other fishes? How do you go from being a carnivore to being, a fish that eats fruits and seeds and plants and stuff like that?
Yeah.
How do you change your toolkit? How do you change your tool set to sort of match that new job? And so I do this because people have a hard time understanding how long evolutionary history is. And we sort of talked about how one of the reasons why I like the fishes that I'm going to speak about in just a bit, like piranhas and stuff, is because they're so diverse. So it's one family. It's about 40 million years old. And you've got piranhas that are top predators, so just like lions. You've got piranhas that are ectoparasites, so they feed on the scales, fins, and slime of other kinds of fishes. And the sister group to piranhas are called pacus. And so these are these big plant-eating fishes. And in fact, the research that we've done has shown that meat-eating piranhas arose from a plant-eating pacu-like ancestor, which is cool. Yeah. And so everything you'd see in the savannah, the lion, the hyena, the antelope, you've got all that diversity of jobs, of ecological roles in this one family of fishes, right?
Yeah.
And that's always kind of struck me as being bizarre and cool. Obviously, piranhas are easy to chat about because everybody kind of already has a sense of who piranhas are.
That's Finding Nemo. Well, that's
right.
Honest.
Yeah, and like horrible B-rate sci-fi, right? But we know that piranhas aren't like as bloodthirsty as they're portrayed in in TV, I mean, they can attack things if they're starved and like stuck in these smaller pools when the water drops and when things dry out. But most folks get bitten by piranhas if they've caught the piranha on a hook. They're trying to remove it, or piranhas, some species, the male and the female guard their nests, so folks might stumble into the nests when they're trying to bathe, so they get bitten. And of course, if you have big teeth, big sharp teeth, those bites can hurt. But what really struck me about these things is there had been a little bit of research on piranhas, like how hard they bite, how they replace their teeth. But it was becoming more and more clear that piranhas evolved from things that ate plants. And I was curious about like how that came to be. And of course, the most iconic thing about piranhas, I think, is their teeth, right? And I think we've talked about this before. I can't remember quite, but piranhas are really, really strange because they replace all the teeth on one side of their head at once, right?
Yeah.
So right-hand side, upper and the lower teeth are all shed at once. And then they're replaced again all at once from teeth that develop within the jaw. So a little bit more like our teeth than you would think about for like, a normal fish.
Yeah.
But my question when I first started to work with this group is like, well, what do the pacus, like what do the plant-eating species do? And it turns out that, after we did a bunch of science, that they actually replace their teeth in the same way. And another weird thing about piranha teeth is those teeth actually lock together to form sort of a saw blade. And so if you look at a piranha tooth, they're like triangular, right? Mm-hmm. They have these smaller cusps, these smaller points that are off on the side of the main tooth. And those smaller cusps actually lock into whichever tooth is like adjacent to it.
So they kind of
kind of like a what?
Like a hook in a way?
Yeah, or like a how like IKEA furniture like fits together, those little like wooden dowels that you stick into a hole. That's kind of how they like lock. And
gotcha.
That's supposed to be useful because when you think about it, like a piranha, they bite something and then they kind of thrash like back and forth, and so they're sawing this nice chunk of flesh out of whatever the prey is. What's cool about that is both the replacement and the fact that the teeth like lock to get together evolved in the things that ate plants first, and then it was just co-opted when piranhas started to eat meat, right? So it means like a lot of the things that we would consider these hallmarks for consuming flesh and meat and stuff like that actually rose first in things that ate plants. And questions that arise from that is like, well, is there a mismatch? Like, do you really need a tool like teeth that are as, as specific to eat a certain kind of prey? What is it about plants that was useful to have teeth that are like locked to get together and replaced in a certain way that is also useful for eating flesh? And so those were the sorts of things that we were interested in to start off. And some of the answers to that are fairly straightforward. Like, if you look at horses, you look at buffalo, stuff like that, their teeth wear down super fast. Yeah. So having a continuously replaced set of teeth is helpful because plants invest in granular substances that help grind the teeth down of things that eat them as a way to discourage being eaten, right? And plant materials are kind of tough. If you've ever like bitten into an unripe fruit, it's hard to sink your teeth into, right? So there's like reasons why things that eat plants have sharp teeth that continuously replace, because things that eat plants need sharp teeth too. And if you've ever been bitten by a horse, you'd know that herbivores have some pretty sharp teeth. So that's kind of how I got started in this. And then, as with everything else in science, the number of questions that branched off from that original curiosity just exploded.
It turns into a million different things.
Yeah. And so what my lab's going to be doing in the near future is asking things like, how often do herbivores replace their teeth? We know that piranhas replace their teeth, or at least one side of their teeth, like once or twice a year. And which sounds like a terrible way to live. As a guy who is scared of the dentist, like I guess it's good. They don't have to go to the dentist, because if their teeth gets worn down, they just have to
get new ones.
Set. Yeah, right. But it's crazy when we looked at the inside of the jaw, like the amount of changes to the bone structure and stuff that supports the teeth. It just looks miserable. It just looks like constant changes to how the jaw works and stuff like that. But yeah, so one of the things that kind of emerged from this is there's lots of literature that's relatively, older, like 30s, 40s, and 50s, about how things like bats or primates ate fruit. And there's virtually nothing about fishes. And I got interested in fishes that eat fruits and seeds, partly because eating plants isn't really sort of like a monolith. Like, you could eat leaves, you could eat flowers, you could eat seeds, you could eat fruit. And thinking of the materials that comprise those prey, they're very distinctive, right? Like,
I was gonna say they're all very different.
Yeah, like you could think about it like gnawing on tree bark is different from like eating spinach, right? Yeah. Like one sounds a lot more tractable than the other. And a few things kind of like got me started in this direction. One is if you ever go to the Amazon and you go to a market in Colombia or Peru, you'll see these huge pacu called like tambaqui. And when you look at their stomachs, they're packed full of seeds. And there's this guy, Michael Goulding, who spent, 15, 20 years in Brazil. And he was the one who kind of documented that these fishes were eating fruits and seeds, because he kind of paid attention to what the indigenous groups in the area were doing and what they were showing him. And he was the one to really kind of translate the knowledge that those folks had to like the Western world.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like I'll send you some photos at some point, but at certain points of the year, these huge fishes, like some of the largest fishes by weight that are in the Amazon, are just packed full of seeds. And if you go, you actually hunt for them or fish for them by sitting in a canoe and slapping the paddle on the water. And that is thought to attract the fish because it sounds like fruits falling in the water from the trees. Yeah. And so you can actually fish for them with fruit. You put fruit at the end of a hook, throw it in, and you'll catch one of these stupid fish, which is crazy.
That's smart though, and it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, me having an interest in anatomy and function, the first thing I saw is like, wow, the teeth on these things really look like our teeth. They have like incisors and they've got canines and like blunter, more like malariform teeth. And I was like, I wonder if anybody's really ever thought about how these things eat fruit, and seeds. And like I started with, there's been a ton on that in primates and bats, and nothing in fishes. And so I actually think when we first met, I had a student at Friday Harbor who was working on taking fruits. So she 3D printed teeth from piranhas and pacus and was basically stabbing fruit and seeds with those teeth.
Yeah.
To see like what shaped tooth was ideal at breaking through the skin and the pulp, and then the rind, the pulp, and then the actual seeds within the fruit. So that's that's kind of the crazy stuff that we do in the lab. And that's, I have a new student who's going to continue on that work. Basically with the primary question being like, what are the tools that frugivorous, so fruit eating fishes need to eat fruit? And of course the teeth and the jaws are just the first half of that, right? The other thing we're going to start to, to look at soon is what are the adaptations of the gut for trying to digest that stuff.
I'm about to say that's a whole nother story.